My name is Douglas Maclagan, and I've been living in Nepal for 16 years. But before I came to Nepal in 1994, I was living in Holland. I was living in Holland for 14 years. I grew up in London before that. I chose to travel to Asia where I'd never been before. I went to India, went to Nepal, went to Thailand, went to Laos, Vietnam. And for some reason there was like a second sense that I opened up some doors there so that potentially I could return. So I went back researching really the problems of child mortality. And at that time, child mortality was anything from city areas from 7% up to remote mountain areas where there was absolutely nothing, about 34%. And for me, the common thing of one child out of every three just simply not being able to survive and not actually reach school-going age of the age of 6 didn't make sense. You know, 1/3 of the population wouldn't even reach going to school. So I started researching that aspect and going through over the whole country. And there was one particular instance that just changed me for life. This lady just handed over her baby to me, and you can imagine I was a little bit in shock. And what do? The automatic reaction is just to take the baby. And I felt this baby, and it was so light, and it went floppy in my arms, the eyes went rolling, and basically in shock, I handed the baby back. And you could just see in her eyes that she just didn't believe me. She didn't believe that I wasn't a doctor, that I didn't have medicine, that I couldn't help her. And out of, you could say, shame or disgust, distrust maybe, she turned her back on me quite proudly, being Nepalese as they are, and she just slowly trotted down the hill and disappeared. And later on I heard, the next day when I was leaving the village, that young little girl had died. And that trip back to Pokhara, which was a good 8-hour walk and a very bumpy 3-hour in a jeep, it was the longest trip I've ever done. And that vision of that woman, of me being unable to help her with all the things that I had received in the past, comfortable house, public school training, blah, 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 blah. It all disappeared. And that made me really think that after I went back to the government and provided them with my report, that we could really quite easily reduce this horrific child mortality by simply creating early childhood development centres with a primary health care and maternal unit would solve a problem. And we mustn't forget that the maternal mortality is massively high. And you take the mother away from a family, and automatically the father of that family will remarry, and the children will not be accepted by the stepmother, and they will become prey to trafficking, child labour, basically child exploitation. So that's when really I decided that I was going to do something, and that's where Child Welfare Scheme was born. But I needed capital, so I went back to London. I was very fortunate in having my own house there. I sold the house, it was in Wapping, and I came back to Nepal. That's where the story of Child Welfare Scheme starts, and we've made huge progress in being able to support now, 15 years on, about 110,000 children each year. We do need to work hand in hand, and you've heard it all before, I understand, but there's one thing what you haven't heard, is that, the way of giving is just, we'll sign up and we'll give. Now, I think that's not taking responsibility. You need to go and see projects. You need to understand the problem. You need to be confronted with it. And then you become a partner.